I didn't think much of it at first, the nonstop buzzing from the family group chat. My phone lit up during dinner, then again while I was folding laundry, and again while I was brushing my hair. When I finally opened it, little bubbles of excitement blurred together into a stream of messages about booking a private dining room, arranging floral centerpieces, and picking outfits for Mom's big night. I scrolled for what felt like miles until it hit me. There was no mention of me anywhere. No, Emily will love this place. No, make sure there's a seat for her. Just photos of table settings and inside jokes I wasn't tagged in. I asked my husband casually, pretending it didn't sting. "So what's going on with everyone?" He barely looked up from his phone. "Oh, it's Mom's birthday dinner," he said, like that explained everything. "They're making it a real thing this year." Something cold slid down my spine. "Dinner as in family dinner?" He hesitated, that flicker of discomfort crossing his face each time his mother's name came up. "Yeah, but Mom thought it should just be immediate family." His words landed with the dull heaviness of being erased. I didn't argue, just nodded like it was fine, though my throat burned. It's strange, being excluded by people who still expect your kindness, your presence around holidays, your polite smile at barbecues. I had tried for years to fit in, to bake the desserts she liked, to compliment her dresses, to laugh at jokes that never included me. Yet now, I wasn't even fit for her birthday table. That night, as he scrolled through seating charts with his mother, I quietly folded laundry in the next room, each shirt tighter in my hands than the last. I told myself I didn't care. But when laughter drifted from the call, and I heard Margaret say, "Good, it'll be nice without distractions this time," I realized I wasn't just forgotten. I was unwanted. I didn't cry. I just sat there under the soft hum of the ceiling fan, the quiet spinning above me sharper than anything they could have said aloud. I remember thinking, fine, if they didn't want me there, they'd get exactly what they wanted. And eventually, they'd learn what that truly meant. From the very first day I met Margaret, she smiled like someone performing grace under duress. Her lips curved, but her eyes stayed still, flat and assessing, the way a teacher watches a student who's already failed the test. Over time, I learned to read between those smiles. The "you look lovely" really meant you're trying too hard. The "you must be tired" translated to, "you look older than my son deserves." When I joined the family, I told myself I'd win her over with patience. I remembered birthdays, offered help in the kitchen, and laughed at stories I'd heard a dozen times. Yet every attempt seemed to earn me another gentle cut, disguised as charm. She loved comparing me to my husband's ex, whom she still invited to coffee. "Oh, she had such a natural way with people," Margaret would sigh, like I didn't exist in the same room. At family gatherings, she'd lean in during conversations I wasn't part of and say too sweetly, "We love having you around. Emily, it's good you're getting comfortable here." The others would smile awkwardly while my husband shifted in silence, pretending not to notice the insult buried in politeness. That silence did more damage than her words ever could. Little moments festered. The way she corrected me in front of her friends. The way she handed me her empty wine glass with a chirp of, "Be a dear." I told myself I was imagining things, that I needed thicker skin. But small humiliations have a way of collecting in the corners of your memory, until one day they form a wall you can't climb over. In public, I smiled back. In private, I began counting the smiles she owed me. I could still see her face the last time we spoke before the dinner planning, a flawless, polite expression, the picture of family warmth. But I remember realizing in that moment that her smiles weren't masks at all. They were weapons, polished, predictable, and practiced, and that realization would be the last time her courtesy ever fooled me again. Because after that dinner I wasn't invited to, something hardened quietly inside me. Those delicate little smiles had always cut me open. Soon, I decided, they'd finally draw blood of their own. The morning after the group chat revelation, I sat across from my husband at breakfast, staring at the steam curling from my coffee. I kept waiting for him to mention the dinner, some signal that he understood how deeply it had stung. Instead, he scrolled through headlines, spoon clinking casually against his mug. I finally asked, "So you're really going to the birthday dinner without me?" He looked up like I'd asked something trivial. "Mom just wants it small. You know how she is," he said, already half back in the screen's glow. That sentence, "you know how she is," landed like a verdict. I did know. I also knew that every time I swallowed her insults, it gave him permission to ignore them. I could practically feel my composure cracking. "You could still stand up for me," I said carefully. "Just once." His sigh was louder than I expected. "Emily, please don't start. It's her 60th. Let's not make a scene. No scene." That was his priority. Not his wife's humiliation, not my quiet tears the night before, but his ability to glide through life scene-free. The words, "don't take it personally," followed, lazy and dismissive. Something inside me went cold. How do you not take being erased personally? How do you separate hurt from identity when the people meant to defend you wave it off like weather? I finished my toast in silence, though I tasted only salt. He kissed my shoulder before he left for work. That automatic gesture that used to feel intimate. Now it felt like punctuation to the sentence. "You're alone in this, again." After the door shut, I sat there until the kitchen went still, every tick of the clock sharpening my thoughts. I realized that I had spent years pretending his passivity was neutrality. It wasn't. Neutrality in cruelty is complicity. That morning marked the quiet end of my hope for fairness from him. Something shifted, thin as paper yet irreversible. If defending me meant disrupting his mother's comfort, he'd always choose comfort. So I decided from that moment I wouldn't ask again. It's strange how betrayal can arrive in pixels. That night the house was so quiet I could hear the hum of the refrigerator and the faint echo of my own breath. I tried to distract myself with a movie, a bath, anything that smelled of normalcy, but my thoughts kept looping back to that dinner. At some point, out of sheer weakness, or maybe instinct, I picked up my phone. The family group chat glittered with activity, photos popping up, bursts of emoji laughter. I hesitated before opening them, but curiosity clawed harder than pride. The first image froze me. Margaret, radiant under chandeliers, surrounded by her children. My husband sat right beside her, hand resting proudly on her shoulder. "Can't believe we pulled off this surprise with everyone I love," her caption sang. Everyone. That word hit harder than any direct insult she'd ever thrown my way. I zoomed in, even though I didn't know why, studying faces that weren't looking for me. The same people who'd shared my table on holidays now glowed in celebration, while I glowed in the light of my phone screen. The cruelty wasn't loud. It was elegant, polished, completely intentional. I set the phone down, then picked it up again like it burned. Each photo I swiped through felt like hearing laughter through a locked door. Their smiles looked brighter, freer, as if I'd been the weight holding their perfect family down. I wondered if my husband had noticed the empty chair that should have been mine, or if they'd simply filled it with another centerpiece. Somewhere between anger and numbness, a thought sparked. They had staged the perfect night, but perfection has a price. My embarrassment shifted into something steadier, sharper. This wasn't just exclusion. It was rehearsal for a downfall they hadn't imagined yet. I closed social media, poured the untouched wine into the sink, and stared at my reflection in the dark window. Let them have their night. Let them toast to everyone they loved. Soon, they'd remember exactly who they'd left out, and wish they hadn't. The following afternoon, I was tidying the kitchen when I noticed an envelope on the counter, addressed to my husband. The logo printed on it was familiar, the same restaurant from the photos I had tortured myself with the night before. My stomach tightened, but curiosity outweighed dread. When I opened it, a printed confirmation email slipped out. The header reading, "Reservation paid in full." My eyes skimmed the fine print until one detail stopped me cold. The payment had been charged to our joint card. My card. For a long minute, I just stared. The same money we'd budgeted for groceries, for bills, for us, had paid for the dinner I wasn't invited to. The laughter on those photos suddenly sounded more expensive. A flicker of rage coiled into something colder, smarter. If they had no problem using my resources to exclude me, then maybe their perfect celebration deserved an untimely adjustment. I sat down at the computer and opened the restaurant's website. The cancellation policy stared back. Full refund if canceled 72 hours in advance. The clock wasn't even close to that mark. I didn't have to think twice. When I called, my voice sounded calm, almost bored. "Yes, this is Emily. I'd like to cancel a reservation under Daniel Thompson." The receptionist hesitated, checked the system, and said in her polished tone, "Of course, ma'am. May I ask the reason?" I smiled at the empty kitchen like it was my audience. "Family emergency," I said. It wasn't entirely a lie. Something inside me had indeed died and reorganized itself. As soon as she confirmed the refund back to my card, a strange, quiet satisfaction filled the room. Their grand dinner, their prideful exclusion, it all suddenly belonged to me again. But I wasn't finished. Curiosity pricked at me, and I scrolled further down the form until I saw an option: book a private suite. A thought brightened, dangerous and delicious. I entered my name, selected the same date, same time, but a private suite upstairs, seats for 3. Once payment cleared, I leaned back and smiled. If revenge truly was best served cold, I intended to serve it chilled, plated, and garnished with their own arrogance. In the days leading up to Margaret's birthday, our home became a stage for polite pretending. My husband hummed as he picked out a suit, the sound so casual it scraped my nerves. I asked him how many guests were coming, careful to keep my tone light. He said maybe 20, mostly family. His unbothered confidence would have impressed me if it hadn't disgusted me first. He had no idea the family dinner had already vanished from the restaurant's calendar. At work, I caught myself smiling for no reason. The thrill of what I'd done pulsed like a secret heartbeat. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about reclaiming power, piece by piece. When Margaret called our house to confirm details, I overheard her say, "It'll be the highlight of my year." I covered my mouth to stop a laugh, the sound threatening to spill. For once, her words felt true, but not for the reasons she believed. On the night before the dinner, I ironed my own dress, a simple black one that made me look calm, controlled. I wasn't attending their party. I was walking into mine. My private suite upstairs was booked, elegant in its anonymity. 2 seats were reserved for friends who'd seen the years of little humiliations and said nothing, only because they knew revenge came slow. I could already imagine them downstairs. Margaret giving orders, the hostess checking the reservation and frowning. Then confusion crawling across her perfect smile as reality unraveled. The beauty of it wasn't in destroying her evening. It was in reclaiming my dignity, without ever raising my voice. The calm that followed felt like surrender, but of a different kind. It wasn't peace born of forgiveness. It was the composure of someone who has set her pieces just right. When I finally lay in bed, the night hummed soft and steady around me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small or silenced. Tomorrow, Margaret would learn what it meant to ignore the quiet one at the table. And I would be upstairs, sipping wine, savoring the lovely sound of their confusion echoing below. By the time the sun dipped behind the roof lines, I was already dressed. My black dress felt like armor, sleek, simple, impenetrable. The restaurant shimmered in the city glow, tall glass and gold accents that promised luxury, expectation, importance. I arrived a little early, checked in under my own name, and the hostess led me to the private suite upstairs. From my seat by the railing, I could see part of the grand dining floor below, the same spot where Margaret's booking should have been. I ordered a glass of wine and waited. It began slowly, my husband's family entering, laughter bubbling as they handed coats to the attendant, Margaret in glittering silver, her pride radiating through every gesture. I could almost feel her satisfaction when she announced, "Reservation for Thompson, party of 20. Then it happened. The hostess's pleasant professionalism melting into confusion. She scrolled through her tablet, her smile faltering. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I don't seem to have that on file." A pause, a perfectly weighted silence, followed by Margaret's sharp tone. "That's impossible. I confirmed this weeks ago." Her guests exchanged glances, awkward, pitiful smiles wobbling between sympathy and disbelief. I sipped my wine, slow and deliberate, watching as frustration tinted Margaret's face. My husband checked his phone, then hers, both of them blinking at screens that offered no rescue. I didn't hear every word, but I saw enough. Her insistent gestures, the staff's apologetic head shakes, the subtle curve of panic forming in that perfectly sculpted jawline. Finally, they drifted toward the bar area, unsure what to do, champagne dreams dissolving into awkward small talk. Upstairs, my friends arrived, a quiet pair who needed no explanation for my smirk. We placed our orders, laughter soft and restrained, the kind that echoes like confidence. I could almost taste the irony. Same venue, same night, separate worlds. Down below, humiliation brewed. Up here, I savored calm control. When dessert arrived, I raised my glass toward the chaos below. Not to gloat, but to toast the lesson unfolding in real time. Dismissing someone doesn't erase them, it sharpens them. And that night, Margaret's perfect celebration had turned into my perfect silence. He came home later than usual, the slam of the door louder than he probably intended. I stayed seated at the kitchen island, half a glass of champagne left from my private dinner still bubbling faintly beside me. His face was crimson, anger, embarrassment, maybe both. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel small seeing it. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he shouted. His voice cracked halfway through, the fear of humiliation outweighing any actual concern. He dropped his jacket onto a chair, pacing. Mom was mortified. "The restaurant said you canceled her reservation." I let a quiet moment stretch, then turned the flute between my fingers. "That's funny," I said evenly, "because I didn't get any invitation to that celebration. Yet somehow the payment came off my card, so technically I just canceled my own dinner." He froze. The room held its breath. "You could have talked to me," he said, tone softening as if reason could rewrite history. "I did talk to you," I reminded him. "When she insulted me, when she excluded me, when you told me not to take it personally." I looked up, eyes steady. So this is me finally not taking it personally. I simply took my money back. He tried reclaiming some moral high ground, muttering about family and forgiveness, but his conviction wavered. The guilt on his face said he already knew the truth. I'd only exposed the cracks he chose to ignore. When he finally sat down, head in his hands, I felt no triumph, just clarity. "Margaret had her night," I said softly. "Just not the one she planned. Maybe now she'll think twice before deciding who belongs." He didn't respond, and I didn't fill the silence. I tapped the rim of my glass, the sound crisp and final, like a gavel striking truth. For the first time, he looked at me with something closer to respect than pity, and that was worth every canceled plate of food. In the days that followed, the silence was deafening. No calls from the in-laws, no chipper texts about family gatherings or holiday plans. Just muted group chats and the occasional scene beneath my husband's messages. Word, however, travels faster than damage control. Within 48 hours, distant cousins started asking questions. "Did you hear what happened at Aunt Margaret's dinner?" The story had split into a dozen imperfect versions, but every path led back to one conclusion. Margaret's arrogance finally tripped her. Apparently, she'd spent most of the canceled dinner trying to convince everyone it wasn't her fault, raising her voice at waiters, claiming technical errors. Some relatives had quietly backed away. Others exchanged indulgent looks, the kind reserved for a queen discovering she's lost her crown. My husband's sister told friends that Margaret deserved it. She'd gone. Too far this time. Even he couldn't defend her, without sounding ridiculous. When I saw Margaret a week later at a family brunch, she didn't cancel fast enough. The transformation was breathtaking. The woman who once orchestrated every conversation now chose silence as her shield. Her usual perfume couldn't mask the unease hanging between us. She avoided my eyes, stirring her coffee endlessly, waiting for someone else to make her feel important again. No one did. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Her empire of polite cruelty had collapsed without me lifting more than a phone call. My revenge wasn't the noise of triumph. It was the absence of her power. At home, my husband moved more carefully around me, his voice softer, his pride dented but intact. I caught him looking at me differently, as though he couldn't decide if he was afraid or impressed. I didn't clarify it for him. Let uncertainty do the teaching. The family had wanted to remind me of my place. Now they couldn't discuss an event, without remembering who actually held control that night. And that, I thought, was the kind of silence worth keeping. A week after the chaos, I stood in the stationery aisle of a small boutique, fingertips skimming over glossy cards embossed with glitter and meaningless sentiment. I found one that felt right, simple ivory, a small gold key printed in the corner. Inside it was blank. Perfect. At home, I sat at the kitchen table, pen hovering over the surface for a long time. Then I wrote only one sentence. Next time, invite everyone you love. I slipped the refund receipt neatly inside, folded once. There was a subtle music in sealing that envelope, the sound of resolution rather than revenge. No anger, no flourish, just the quiet satisfaction of balance restored. I dropped it off in her mailbox myself, catching my reflection in the metal as the flap closed. My eyes looked calm for the first time in weeks. Later that evening, my husband mentioned his mother had received something from me. His voice trembled between confusion and apprehension. "She didn't say much," he muttered. "Just that she understands now." I nodded, grateful he didn't question further. I pictured her opening that envelope at her spotless kitchen counter, expecting apology and instead meeting accountability, paper thin and undeniable. For once, her silence wouldn't sting. It would soothe. That night, I lit a single candle with dinner. There was no noise, no tension, no forced civility. Just me, a quiet kitchen, and the scent of wine breathing in the glass. They had celebrated without me, yes, but I had finally celebrated something greater. Not victory, not vengeance, peace, the kind that doesn't need witnesses. 2 weeks after sending that card, I booked another reservation at the same restaurant, same night of the week, same time. This time, my name was on the list proudly, not hidden beneath anyone else's. I arrived early, the maitre d' recognizing me with a discreet smile. "Welcome back, Ms. Thompson. Your table is ready." Those words settled over me like a quiet crown. I'd invited 2 friends who'd seen the years of small humiliations and never pressed me to retaliate. "We're just happy to see you smile," one of them said when we sat down. And I did. It wasn't a sharp, triumphant grin. It was an easy, genuine curve I'd forgotten I was capable of. The food tasted like freedom, seasoned, rich, nothing rushed. We toasted with wine instead of resentment. I could feel tension leaving my shoulders, one knot at a time. The restaurant buzzed below the soft hum of conversation and clinking glasses. But around our little table, it felt almost sacred. At one point, the waiter placed a small complimentary dessert in front of me, chocolate and gold leaf gleaming under candlelight. "For a special guest," he said kindly. My throat caught a little at that. A simple gesture, yet worlds away from the feeling of being unwanted. When I stepped outside afterward, the night air carried the faintest hint of rain. I looked up at the same windows where, weeks earlier, chaos had erupted. Now everything was calm, ordinary, exquisite. I realized I didn't need them to see me winning. I just needed to feel whole sitting at my own table. That dinner wasn't revenge anymore. It was reclamation. And as I walked home, heels clicking against the pavement, I understood that the sweetest justice isn't humiliation. It's peace sturdy enough to dine on alone. After that night, something shifted between us, quiet but undeniable. He didn't bring up the canceled dinner again, maybe because the truth still had teeth. Instead, small gestures began to appear, shy and cautious, as if he was learning a new language built from care. He started asking if I wanted coffee before making his own, leaving the last piece of toast for me, instead of assuming I didn't want it. These tiny reparations would have gone unnoticed years ago. Now they glimmered like rare apologies without words. One evening, he came home early, shoulders hunched under the weight of unspoken things. "Mom's been rethinking how she treats people," he murmured, not meeting my gaze. I wanted to ask if that included me, but something gentler stopped me. Growth, like healing, doesn't always announce itself. Our dinners became quieter, but in the best way, less defensive air hanging between chewed bites. He'd glance at me sometimes with that look that searches for forgiveness but doesn't dare ask outright. I didn't rush to fill the silence for him. It wasn't resentment. It was balance. The kind we should have built from the start. He reached for my hand one night, tentative, like testing ice he hoped wouldn't crack. I didn't pull away. His thumb brushed my knuckles and he whispered, "You didn't deserve any of that." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't enough. But it was real. And real, finally, was enough for me. The next morning, I found a note tucked under my coffee cup. I told Mom, "You're done being disrespected." I should have said that sooner. No signature, no flourish, just truth on a scrap of paper. For the first time since the whole ordeal began, I felt something between us settle. Not back to what we'd been, but forward into what we could still become. I still think about that dinner sometimes. Mostly when the house is quiet and the soft glow of evening seeps through the curtains. If I close my eyes, I can still hear the laughter from that night, theirs and mine, echoing from two different worlds. Only now it no longer hurts. It almost feels like a story that happened to someone else. When people talk about revenge, they imagine fire, shouting, spectacle, public takedowns. But mine arrived in whispers, a phone call, an email, a canceled booking, a single sentence in a birthday card. No one saw me rage. They only saw me disappear, then return stronger. That was enough. Margaret barely looks at me when we cross paths now. She greets me with cautious politeness, eyes flicking toward my husband as if seeking approval. It's ironic. She once tried to make me invisible, and now she can't look directly at me. That, to me, is justice. But the real victory isn't her silence. It's mine. I have learned that peace can be both a wound and a weapon, and the sharpest response to cruelty is composure. I didn't need to ruin her to redeem myself. I just needed to stop begging for approval that was never mine to win. The sweetest revenge I've discovered isn't about making them regret what they did. It's about walking away so completely that their opinions lose oxygen. I still dine at that restaurant from time to time. The staff recognizes me now, welcomes me with warmth, sometimes says they remember the night of the mix-up. I smile, order the same wine I had that evening, and lift my glass, not to them, not to her, but to the quiet power of self-respect. They excluded me from dinner, so I served them dignity, my own, and left the table full. Time, it turns out, softens even the sharpest edges of revenge. Weeks stretched into months, and life began to look normal again. A quieter, sturdier normal. The scandal over the canceled dinner melted into family folklore, reduced to whispers and awkward pauses no one wanted to reignite. Yet for me, the echo never truly vanished. It just became background music to a wiser rhythm. I learned that exclusion can be a strange gift. It teaches you the value of your own presence. It shows you that love offered without respect is just performance, and silence, when chosen, not forced, is a language of power. I stopped apologizing for taking up space. I stopped waiting to be invited anywhere I wasn't celebrated. The difference was instant, almost physical, like stepping from shadow into sunlight. Margaret eventually reached out, her message brief and careful. "We should start fresh," she wrote. For a moment, I almost laughed. Freshness doesn't erase memory, but it does allow understanding. So I agreed to meet her for coffee. The conversation was stiff but civil. She didn't apologize, and I didn't ask her to. I think we both understood apologies are less powerful than changed behavior. As for my marriage, it found a slower, steadier heartbeat. My husband began noticing small things. The way words can wound without volume, the way absence can speak louder than any confrontation. We rebuilt, not from love's ashes, but from mutual recognition. Respect, I learned, is love with boundaries. Sometimes late at night I revisit that old group chat, now mostly quiet. A few photos remain, the party that never happened, the perfect smiles before discomfort set in. I no longer feel bitterness when I see them, just perspective. Revenge may have started the story, but dignity finished it, and that's a balance I can live with.